Hello and welcome to the return of Ask George, the first episode of the winter of the day one of the first test between Pakistan and England in Multan. Before we start the questions, George, how has the winter treated you so far? One day in, and you're looking magnificent on it.
I think a week ago I was still in Bristol, so it doesn't really feel the winter's started as such. But it's lovely to be here in Pakistan, a country I've not visited before, and it was nice to be at cricket again. It really was. But it's warm here, and we're not really allowed out, so that's a little bit frustrating. But at the moment, it's still nice to see colleagues, friends, and watch cricket.
Well, let's quickly get on to the questions then. Neil Varani asks, Jimmy to bowl in the third test.
Yeah, look, I don't think it will come to that. And we've got to be very careful we don't make this mistake of making people better in their absence. It was a flat wicket, and there were lots and lots of days when Stuart Broad and Jimmy Anderson would have had equally heartbreaking days. And actually, I thought by the end of the day, England did all right. I think they did all right. It's just really, really flat. And then they're not going back, whether they should or not, they're not going to. And also, Jimmy Anderson's now had some time out. I think it would be quite hard for him to get back to the stage where he was a viable option. So I suspect that question was sent around tea time. And by the close, with 4 wickets down, things didn't look so difficult. It was pretty flat out there.
Mike asks an interesting question leading on from that. Have we forgotten that days like this in this part of the world happen? And is there any more that England could have done? I guess the 2022 and what happened on the first day there and 500 and etc. I think maybe there is perhaps a little bit of value to that, and this is perhaps this is the norm, not what we saw a couple of years ago.
Exactly that. I mean, I think that's quite a wise question. And I think that well, it's why peace is about today, really, isn't it? That this is a reversion to the norm. Before that 2022 tour, England had only ever won 2 tests in Pakistan. So there have been a lot of wickets like this in Pakistan over the years, and a lot of fairly attritional cricket. Now, that moves on to the second part of the question: could they have done anything differently? Well, sure they could. Whether it would have been better or worse is moot. But I think it's relevant that they went 40 overs without bowling a maiden. When they finally bowled one, they took a wicket in the next over. I think that is relevant, but how relevant, I don't know. They could have bowled differently. They could have used different players. They could have tried to bowl dry and frustrate Pakistan. They could have played a slightly more old-fashioned way, but they're not going to. And actually, the end results at the end of the day, they weren't too bad. So I just think, we're a few tests away from Pakistan scoring 450 odd in their first innings against Bangladesh and losing by 10 wickets. Okay, so England are not out of this game. They're not anywhere near out of this game. Pakistan have had a decent first day, but there's a lot to play for still. It's absolutely not over.
Politics and Cricket asks, why are the likes of Robinson and Dawson ignored repeatedly? Is this similar to the answer you just gave about Jimmy and that players getting better out of the team, or is there
Well,
some
sort of. I
value
mean,
to this?
sort of. You would have to acknowledge that Robinson bowled very well here, but equally, you know that Robinson limped off the pitch quite a few times with back trouble or whatever it was, and they don't feel they can rely on him. So I don't think that's completely unreasonable. It did seem to happen a couple of times too often. He got a recall to India and hurt his back again. I don't know what's going on with Robinson in some ways. I have quite a lot of respect for his abilities, and had he been fully fit and firing, he would have been an asset today. He definitely would have been. But I think they moved on from him. I think they gave him quite a lot of leeway, and I fear that they made their mind up. So I think it'll be a long way back for Robinson. Liam Dawson is unlucky. I mean, again, Liam Dawson maybe doesn't fit the mould of this side. They think he's maybe too conservative as a bowler, that he's not a tall, drive it into the deck bowler. I think he's an improved cricketer since he last played for England, a mature cricketer with bat and ball, and I personally think he'd be an asset to the side. But is he as good a left arm spinner as Leach? Well, he probably isn't. It's just a different package of skills he would have offered. I think there would have been a place for Liam Dawson on this tour, but let's just get it in perspective. I think he would say, he's Liam Dawson, not Shane Warne. He's a really good, reliable, doughty all-round cricketer. I don't see him taking 3, 4, 5 wickets on the first day on this sort of pitch. So let's just be realistic. But for what it's worth, I think they're both cricketers that I wish England were a little bit more open-minded about, to be honest. But Robinson, I don't know. He has walked off a couple of times too many. I can't remember what he said in that interview I did with him at Hove at the start of the season, but he said something like, "You can't keep limping off and leaving everyone else to bowl your overs," and he can't. And had that happened today, it would have been monstrous for the other seamers, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we'd be taking Robinson on far more than we're taking on the seamers who actually went through the day and did the hard yards and actually got through it, I guess. And then Dawson's an interesting
Right,
one.
and he is at the point where I think Robinson, where he's going to have to do something quite special to win a recall. I
Definitely.
think they have. There is a full stop there at the moment. I don't think they're waiting for anything, but I do think he's capable of it. I do think he's a very good cricketer. I don't know what makes him tick, but if he can put it all together, he has the skills to still be an asset for England.
Nisham Sapkota asks, Potts took 21 wickets in the Lions tour of India. Where is he, or is he not very good at golf?
He's here. He's around, and he would have, again. Look, he would have been really willing today. He's fit. He's strong. He's got some skills. But what do you think he would have done? I mean, what do you think he'd have done? He would not have torn through that batting on this surface. He's not as quick as Cass or Atkinson. He probably doesn't quite have the skill set of Wokes. He's somewhere in between, and he's a good player, and he could come in and freshen up the attack for the next test. He's a member of the squad. But I can see why they haven't picked him. And I think we should just be realistic about, I say again, players becoming much better when they're not in the side. Hasn't done his career any harm at all not to play today. Just to go back a couple of years, do you think if Anderson and Broad had gone on that Caribbean tour, the one which Wokes and Overton played instead, they would have played any more Test cricket? I don't.
We're so close. We love to do this. We do this in every sport. I don't know if it's, and also I don't know if it's just the English or just the British that do this. In that there's no doubt that if England's attack today had been Liam Dawson and Ollie Robinson and Matthew Potts, and I don't know Josh Hull, for example, that we'd be having the same conversation. We'd be saying, why didn't they play Bashir? He was good in India. Why didn't they play Leach? He was so good 2 years ago. You know, why are
Yeah,
we not playing Chris Wokes? Yeah, okay, he's not very good away from home, but he's a reliable performer. Suddenly, those guys
yeah.
look even better and better, and we're just going to go round and round in circles. There's this obsession with look that the alternative is always better than what you know. Sometimes the devil is better. The devil is better, slightly better, and I think that's true in this case. It's a silly one.
They're completely reasonable selections.
Yeah, yeah.
I would have liked them to have dared to be dull and bowled drier at times, but I don't think by the end of the day they you would have too many complaints. I think Simon Mann said early on, this looks like a 300 for 3 wicket. And sometimes you do just get flat wickets. Pakistan is the home of flat wickets, and we saw one today.
Did he say that at 300? I mean, it wasn't, was it? But
No, he said it well before lunch. He said it. He said it early. He said it may have been 50 for 1 when he said it.
would there be more chance of a result if England had batted first? That's a question from Sushan. I guess that maybe ignores there was a little bit of spin there, and I think England got it reversing at one point as well. It doesn't look like I wouldn't be completely deflated if I'm Shah Massoud. Let's put it that way.
No, look, Pakistan have had the better of the day, but they won the toss, and it's a big toss to win. And he made sure, well, partly him, that they took advantage. Would there be more chance for a result? I don't know. There'd be more chance of England winning if they'd won the toss. I don't know what the pitch is going to do. It did seem to turn a little bit more. It wasn't maybe by the close of the play. I mean, and you would think as the game wears on, there'll be some wear and tear, and it would, normal stuff. You would think it would turn more, but it's not quite as hot as we were told. I mean, it's plenty hot enough, but it's not maybe as desperately blisteringly hot as we thought. And there is a bit of grass on the wicket, so it doesn't look at the moment as if it's anywhere near crumbling and becoming a nightmare to bat on. Maybe on the fourth day that could happen, but there's so much cricket to play. And England, well, both teams now play quite aggressively. It's far too early to write this off as a draw. I'd be surprised if it was a draw, to be honest.
I think when you get a question like that, we really appreciate all the questions we get, but I'm not necessarily,
Massive.
but I don't know if I necessarily agree with with the premise of it, or nor do I think it. I think it's slightly premature to be thinking that we're heading for a
Yeah, but
cold
we,
war
we
after
yeah,
one.
but we that's on us. That's cool because we asked people the questions early.
Yeah,
I'm saying, first thing in the day, particularly. I didn't think I could use Twitter today. I don't think you're meant to be able to, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't.
yeah,
And so we ask questions, and people very kindly send in their questions, sometimes quite early in the day. And I think they were packed up 260 for one, and cruising
yeah.
at that stage. All these things look very fair and look like England were in real trouble. Right now, I don't know. What are Pakistan 328 or something?
Hmm,
I mean, they need at least 150 more, I think,
yeah.
to have a possibly match defining score. Certainly, if they're bowled out for another 100 in the morning, England will be delighted. Long way to go.
Danny asks an interesting one. Would you agree with McCullum that playing golf is equally as important as spending time with your family and that both are more important than coaching? Are we, with this question, are we at risk of drifting into a what players do in their spare time conversation and sort of, so and so does something 2 days after losing, those kind of horrible, those awful stories you see often, sort of
Yeah.
maybe
Okay.
football.
Jimmy Anderson is not England's fast bowling coach.
No, indeed.
So let's establish that first of all. He's on a temporary contract where he is seeing whether he likes it, and they are seeing whether he's any good at it. So it is not a question quite that he's simply on a set. He's the England bowling coach. Just to answer the question, I don't know whether he did say those things, but surely not saying that playing golf is more important than spending time with your family or equating them. If you're a golfer, it's probably quite important to do your job. If you're a bowling coach, it's probably quite important to do your job. But if you need to spend time with your family, I think everyone would agree that was more important, obviously. So there's no doubts about that. But there are things about it I do find slightly unsatisfactory. I mean, you could argue that England have recently kind of employed a couple of coaches, and I'm talking Flintoff and Anderson, who are they clients of the agency that's owned by the chair of the ECB? Don't know. That is worthy of exploration. Put it like that. Is it a little bit odd that they've turned up on this tour without a seam bowling coach? Well, yeah, I think it is, but it's not particularly unusual for this team. I don't. I think it's happened before. I can't tell you where right now, but did they have a seam bowling coach in India? Trying to think back to the Nets there. I mean, they may have had senior players who were doing the job, but the idea that they necessarily needed someone in that first session to say, "Hey, Wokesy, don't bowl on his legs." I suspect not. But my issue is that it looks a bit casual. And if you keep looking casual with the, lack of warm up play, lack of coaching staff, lack of time to acclimatise, all these things add up. And they might be tiny fractions of a percentage of a reason to diminish the side a little bit. But I do think they add up. And I don't think it's a great look for one. And I generally think that the harder you work in most things, the more you put yourself out there, you'll get better rewards. So I think there's a reasonable point in there somewhere, but we sometimes are at risk of grasping at answers to explain why England didn't have a particularly brilliant day. And one, I think we've got to look at the pitch and say they didn't have an awful day. I'm not sure that Josh Hazelwood would have fared a lot better than Chris Wokes today, for example. I'm not sure that Mitchell Stark would have fared a lot better. And we'll see how Sham Masood and Shaheen Afridi and co fare tomorrow, probably. So I just think we need to be a bit careful about jumping to these answers which we think explain everything. But they all add up. The question about, Robinson and Dawson, the question about whether they should have a bowling coach, the question about whether they could have done anything differently, they perhaps all add up to make something. But how much, I don't know. We'll never know. That's part of the beauty of the sport, that we end up, well, I was going to say in bars. We're not going to meet in many bars in Multan, but we have these chats after play and talk about this stuff and disagree and argue, and that's part of the fun of it, isn't it?
Yeah,
We
and
all
it will
have
keep
different
us
opinions.
employed for a
So
couple more years.
well, I hope so. And but I do think that there is a question in there somewhere, and maybe when you've got an attack that is so inexperienced in these conditions, Gus Atkinson's first game away from home, Bryden Cast's first test, Chris Wokes' first test in Asia for 8 years. I think it would have been sensible to have a more senior head, but I don't think it's the be all and end all. And I definitely don't want to be overly critical on that point. And I thought McCullum was a bit defensive about it yesterday, probably because he appreciates it's not a brilliant look, but I wouldn't read too much into it.
Let's round off with one from Mike Wren Kirkham, and he says, have Pakistan prepared this pitch to get their failing batters into form? It didn't work for
Well,
Babar
if they
Azam,
had
as they
done
did.
that, that's a completely reasonable thing for them to do, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you visit a country and they prepare pitches the way they want to, you just got to suck it up. But in my experience of watching cricket in Pakistan, which is very limited, this is what Pakistan pitches used to look like a lot. I mean, Pakistan was the home of the flat wicket. Remember, even in the last series, I know England won it 3-0, but they were 500 without, breaking sweat on the first. What was it, 75 overs they faced on the first day of the series
Yeah.
last time?
Yeah.
Well, that wicket was pretty flat, eh? So I don't think there's anything untoward here. And if they have designed pitches to get their batters into form, fair play. You just got to adapt to it. England have to take advantage too. Could have backfired with the toss. No complaints. I don't think it's far, far too easy and early to think that this is going to be a draw. It's not how modern cricket's played. You hardly see any draws unless it rains. And a little bit of breaking news for you. I don't think it's going to rain at Multan.
Well, thank goodness we've outlaid for you to be there to tell us this crucial bit of
To
information.
tell you the weather.
Yeah, absolutely.
It is. I sat outside for an hour or two in the afternoon, and it is accumulatively hot, but there's a little bit of a breeze. I think it was 37 or so at the time. I mean, I've known it, it's not as hot as Perth, but they did well. I mean, they're very fit. It's uncomfortable sitting, and let alone running around and stuff. I wouldn't be too hard on England today. I think there are some things that they could have done better, but they're fractional, really. And there was actually quite a lot to admire and like. And equally, you got to give Pakistan lots of credit. And I thought they played really well. And then that last half hour, getting Baba and stuff, that's a big deal. So Pakistan have their noses in front, but not a lot more than that.
I'm just going to share one observation with you before we go, and that was that from watching on the television several thousand miles away, is that I found an irony in the crowd following the shadow along at the back of the stand as the day progressed, i.e., keeping out of the sun the whole day, while 14 or 14, at least 14 men were in the middle of the sun, providing all the entertainment for everyone. Thought there was a slight just something to think about.
Yeah, but that's the way. You'd be absolutely barking mad to sit out in the sun. But that's
To run
the way of
around in
things.
it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that. I think there has been a test earlier here, but obviously we're playing earlier in the year than normal in Multan, and we all know that the schedule in cricket is broken, and it's not very fair. It's not particular. I don't think it can be particularly healthy to ask people to do this, but we've seen it be a lot worse. It wasn't anywhere near as uncomfortable as it was, say, in Mumbai or Delhi during the World Cup, and it wasn't, to be honest, as hot. I mean, it was almost 10 degrees hotter in Perth. 10 degrees hotter in Perth. But it is very different to the last time they were here. I mean, the difference is, at times 20 degrees. That's a massive difference. So I think you've got to take that into account. And would it have helped if they'd been here another week and acclimatised more? Well, of course it would. But what are you going to do? There's cricket all the time. There's wall-to-wall cricket. By the time this finishes, other players will be in the Caribbean. By the time that finishes, players will have been in New Zealand for 2 weeks, I reckon. So there's a lot of cricket going on, and there are compromises being made all the time. But it's a fair point. If it's too uncomfortable for people to actually watch, what's the point, really?